You know, sometimes it's nice to get away from the city. There's something about nature which invigorates me. Invigorates everyone, I think, or at least, I hope it does. Bright sunshine, a brisk breeze, a leisurely walk. There's nothing better to lighten one's spirit and mood. When I set out to collect all 12 of A Short Hike's achievements, I was looking forward to a bit of time in nature. I was ready for new friends, new activities, new views, and old familiar feelings of contentment. But hikes are always better with a friend. And if you are interested, the trail's wide enough for two. And don't worry, I've got lots of things to tell you if you just prefer to listen. I don't mind that one bit. Just the crunching sounds of your footsteps in the leaves is enough for me. But I better get started. After all, it's only a short hike to the top and I've got a lot to say. I begin my journey as all such expeditions should, sitting sleepily in the back of a car. And while I may be sleepy, the person driving the car, fortunately, is anything but. My name is Claire, and I'm on my way to a little summer retreat, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, to take a nice, relaxing break from all of my worries. Although for now, all I'm trying to do is stay awake a bit longer. After all, we're almost at the ferry. The next day, I exit the cottage, greeted by the mid-morning sun. I decide to take a little stroll over to my Aunt May, the one who was driving the car earlier, and I strike up a conversation. She asks what I've been up to so far today, and I tell her I've been waiting for a call. "There's your problem," she says. "There's no reception in a place like this. At least maybe anywhere besides Hawk Peak, the highest point of the island, a good distance from here." Well, my aunt doesn't think it's so far, but I know it is. Taking the trail up to Hawk Peak is a sort of rite of passage for my family, I learned, and it's about time I made the journey. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. But, my aunt tells me encouragingly, today's a fine day to try, and she gives me some directions. When I ask if it's dangerous, my Aunt May assures me that it is certainly not. Being a bird does make heights less of a danger, I suppose. Then she asks me exactly what kind of call I was waiting for. I tell her, the thing. And something unsaid is understood, which I am assured will all work out fine. Perhaps the hike will take my mind off of it. And so, I am off, running around a bit to accustom myself to the controls and learning I have the ability to fly. Well, more so the ability to glide, as I can't go upwards. Not yet, at least. On the beach I find a sandcastle and an item, which I interact with, picking it up, a shell. I also notice some nearby fish in the water and learn I can swim, two things to keep in mind for later. Just ahead on the trail I run into another small bird who tells me about gliding, which, I inform them, I already know about. Past a waterfall, nothing in this one, I find a small leafy thing which I can't do anything with, and another small bird who rudely demands 15 shells from me. I ask her why, and she says because she wants them, which checks out. She then tells me it's a secret why she wants them. I guess I can't argue with that. Nearby I find a stick to pick up and hit things with, and a second shell for the demanding little one. Atop a nearby table I find a coin, nobody will miss that hopefully, and yet another shell lying nearby. Running into another small animal on the trail, I inform him of my slow morning, and sensing that I need a little bit of direction, he gives me a compass. He then teaches me how to use it, and I access it in my inventory. A helpful compass appears on the top right of my screen. Continuing on, I find a treasure chest with some coins in it, as well as a spot to dig. Alas, I am shovelless. However, I spot a shovel nearby, currently owned by this turtle, who is chilling out building sandcastles. I asked to borrow the shovel, but I am told, nope, that's an essential product. However, I notice the shovel is way too big for sandcastle construction, and I tell the little guy that they make smaller shovels for sandcastles. This is news to him, but if I were to bring him one, we could make a trade. Continuing on the trail, I run into a group of climbers and their climbing wall. You guys know there are cliffs everywhere, right? I tell this rhino about my goal to make it to Hawk Peak, and he tells me I'll need to learn rock climbing in order to make it up that far. To accomplish this, they would be willing to let me join the rock climbing club if I want, which is just 2 people I notice. However, the little one apparently resents this insinuation, defending his beloved institution. Once we clear up the confusion, I am inducted as the 3rd member out of hundreds, and the rhino asks me if I have a golden feather. No, I do not. Just regular ones. But I'm told I need one of these golden feathers to climb, so that's an issue. Luckily, the visitor center sells them. Off then I go to find the visitor center. On the trail I meet another little friend who tells me of the existence of a mysterious island. Such intrigue! And just ahead I find a ram sitting by a fire. This is the visitor center, and they sell golden feathers here for 40 coins apiece. It almost feels like they did that on purpose. Unlucky, I guess. Asking about other merchandise, I learn the ram is selling one other thing, a hat for 100 coins. I'm too poor for this park. Luckily, someone buried money everywhere, so I only need to keep exploring to grow my wallet. I set out to do exactly that, soon stumbling upon this cave, which is blocked off. And, nearby, I find a golden feather just sitting atop a hoodoo, for free. Alas, I am a short lass. If only I had wings or something. Still looking around for coins, I instead find another shell, my 6th, and a toy shovel on the beach. And nearby I find a couple of coins, bringing my total above 40. Before heading back to the visitor center, I notice a little cliffside and a painter standing upon it. I strike up a conversation with him and he tells me about his painting, an abstract take on the coastline. It's a bit hard to make out, but I get the spirit of the thing. Unfortunately, the painter is unhappy with it and informs me that he will be relocating soon, in search of inspiration. I'm sure we shall meet again then, my creative friend. In a small valley I find another ram who asks me for the time, but this question is not one that I actually need to answer since the ram really just wanted to complain about losing his watch, which was expensive, and priceless. Don't think it can be both, to be honest. He asks me to keep a lookout for it, which, sure, why not? This ram is very worried that someone is going to sell it on the internet, so I think I should help ease his mind. Returning to the other ram at the visitor center, I finally purchase my first golden feather, and he tells me how they work. When airborne, I can now press Z to flap my wings for an extra jump. Additionally, I now have the ability to grab onto walls and climb up them. The more feathers I have, the more times I can jump in the air, and the longer I can climb. Excitedly, I immediately head back to the other golden feather I had spotted, and put my new ability to the test, quickly climbing up and grabbing a second golden feather. At the visitor center, I find a sign which informs me that the famous dish, strawberries and toast, was invented here at Hawk Peak, and to join them at 5 for a tasting. Interesting. Next, I find this dog who informs me of a race happening near Meteor Lake. His nephew is in this race, and he asks me to check up on him. Hydration is key. The nearby sign tells me that above is the trail to Hawk Peak, but the hike, I am warned, is rather strenuous. Looks like I'll need some more feathers before attempting that. Instead, I head up the cliffside and find a sign. This sign informs me that someone wants to race me somewhere. Someone named Avery. I'll start my training now to get a head start. One long glide back down and I find myself talking to the climbing duo again. They give me a short tutorial on climbing, which I master easily, and then they say it is on to Hawk Peak. I also visit the turtle again and trade him the toy shovel I found for his normal size shovel. Equipping this shovel, I am able to dig up a spot on my first try, and I receive some coins for my effort. Making my way up the path, I encounter a fox. This little guy tells me that he too is trying to hike to Hawk Peak. He hopes to get some good pictures at the top as photography is his hobby. I tell him that if we both make it up at the same time, he'll have to take my picture to commemorate the accomplishment. He agrees wholeheartedly. Just above, I find a rabbit to talk to. Unfortunately, this critter seems to have lost her lucky headband, something she always races with, somewhere in Blackwood Forest. She tells me it's a red headband, and, if I find it, she will give me a pair of running shoes as a reward. She has extra since she was recently sponsored by a shoe company. Alright, making it happen. I respect that. Almost immediately after this, I run into a turtle wearing a red headband. Unfortunately, this does not appear to be the same headband I am looking for. Despite this, after I bring him up to speed, the turtle offers his headband to me anyways, just in case, since it should be the same type as the one which was lost. So, back to Sue, the rabbit, I go. She knows immediately that the headband isn't her lucky one. The sweat stains are all wrong. Blech. But once she finds out that this headband once belonged to Taylor the turtle, she proclaims that this headband must be even luckier than her old one. So, we trade, headband for running shoes. And she tells me that all I must do is hold down C to run with them. I go to test this out, but before I do, I take a moment to talk to Sue again and encourage her, telling her she doesn't even need any luck because she has plenty of skill. And, invigorated by this, she gives me the headband back, stating she doesn't need it. What a strange sequence of events. I decide to continue along this path I found. Here I run into a cliffside too high to climb with my current stash of feathers, so I decide to fly around the island a bit to see what I can find. Inside a treasure chest I manage to find something interesting, a treasure map. It reads, "South of the stone tower, across the river bridge, a lonely seat sits crumbling upon the royal ridge." Fortunately I just spotted a stone tower, so I go south of the tower, as I was told, across the river bridge to look for a lonely seat. And it isn't long before I find this rock formation that looks somewhat chair-like. Sure enough, climbing atop it and digging, I discover a chest with some money. Now I decide it's time to follow Hawk Peak Trail as far up as I can, and so I do, enjoying the view as I go and striking up a nice conversation with this dog who tells me he's only going so far as some place called Outlook Point, and I can meet him there if I'd like. Soon enough, I run into some snow as I climb ever higher, and, after consulting the sign for directions, I head along the path, but, noticing a trail of coins too enticing to pass up, I make a quick diversion to the right. Here, aside from more coins in a chest, I discover a small pool of water and a sign which tells me these sprouts I've been seeing all around are actually rubber flowers, the official flower of Hawk Peak. Apparently, water makes them instantly bloom. How coincidental, then, that there happens to be an unattended bucket right here on this rock. Although I am warned that I can't climb or fly while carrying a bucket full of water, but I can still glide. I quickly grab the bucket, fill it up, and water the sprout, which transforms into a bouncy rubber flower, launching me upwards when I step on it. Returning to the Hawk Peak Trail, I follow it along just a bit more until I run into a tall cliff face with a blue bird leaning on it. This bird asks me if I want to buy golden feathers, which, yes, of course. He gives me the price, 100 coins, an outrageously high price compared to the visitor center. But I do need all the feathers that I can get, so when he offers again I take him up on his trade, purchasing my 4th golden feather. And since I have the cash, I talk to him again and agree to purchase another as well. However, after draining my bank account, the cliff face tells me that I should probably have at least 7 golden feathers before attempting the climb, so I'm still short a couple. Although I do see those climbers who taught me how to climb hard at work up there. Turning back, I find a small structure which looks an awful lot like a fire lookout tower. This, I think, must be Outlook Point. And, kindly enough, someone left a chest here with a free golden feather just lying around. However, I don't see that dog anywhere who said they'd meet me here. I guess I'm early. Since I can't go up, I decide to go down and head around the base of the island to see what I can find. To be honest, I still haven't entirely gotten my bearings with all of the winding trails and cliffs everywhere, and this has not been helped by my lack of exploration. So, correcting this, I begin exploring the west side of the island. Here I run into a welcome sight, a couple of young birds who have set up a net to play volleyball. Wait, no, never mind. To play a game of their own invention, which is called beach stick ball. And, they inform me, I have been challenged to a game, and by law, I now have to play. No getting out of it. So, I make my way over to the other side of the court and grab a stick. There are 3 simple rules. 1. Hit the ball with your stick. 2. Don't let the ball hit the ground. 3. Believe in yourself. Way ahead of you, my tiny bird friends. My first attempt, I get a couple of hits in, but I do miss it after a few more. Fortunately, the birds tell me that this doesn't actually mean that I lose, since losing is impossible in beach stick ball, as the game is strictly co-op, with the goal being to hit the ball back and forth as many times as possible, working together as a team. And, I am told, if we make it to 10 points, I'll get a prize, which I tell them we just did. Oh, he says, then I suppose it is time for a prize, and he gifts me a golden feather, my 7th so far. However, before I celebrate, I am told that 20 points might be possible, and I take that as a challenge. After a few warm-up runs, I finally get the hang of beach stick ball, and I hit the ball back and forth for a while. A good while. Turns out this little bird never misses. When I finally do miss, I am told we hit 109 total hits, and my fellow athlete celebrates since we reached 30 total. Well, guy, we got a few more than 30. I don't know if you realize. Never mind. In reward, he gives me all the money in his pocket, which is fine since his family is rich. And also, as a bonus reward, I am given a baseball cap, another hat which I can equip, like the sweatband I received before. For this, I also received my first achievement. Remember this day forever. Thanks, little guys. As I continue along the path, I run into a small graveyard, and, dropping down the cliffside, I find a sign pointing me towards the Orange Islands, which I make my way onto. Here, I find a deer, manning a small shack. This fellow, it turns out, rents out motorboats, although business is slow today. I am told I could rent the motorboat myself for 100 coins if I wanted to, but I decide to pass on this for the time being since I want to explore a bit more first, but I'll be back. Maybe, when I return, I will be able to help this smaller deer dying, he says, of boredom. He wants to ride the boat, but he is a child, so he's not allowed to drive. Continuing my exploration of the Orange Islands, I find one with an updraft shooting upwards out of a small mountain. Flying over this, I am propelled to the sky, and then I glide downwards, gracefully, all the way onto another island with a dig spot. Digging here, I find another treasure map. This one reads, "Upon a stormy clifftop, one should pause to see the view. Peer through an earthy window, gold is hidden in the blue." It doesn't take me long to figure out that this archway must be the earthy window the riddle is referring to, and since it is storming around here, I figure the stormy clifftop must be around somewhere nearby. In fact, I kind of cheat a little bit. I figure the stormy clifftop is almost certainly in that direction, since that's where the mainland is. So, instead of going up there and looking through the arch, I just imagine what it would be like to look through this archway from over there. That would leave the area I would see right about here. And sure enough, digging around here, I discover another treasure chest filled with coins. You call it laziness, I call it laziness too, but I got the chest, so. Onwards to the northeast section of coastline. After picking up a pickaxe and unblocking a cave entrance, I enter through it and find myself emerging from the cave I discovered earlier, nearby the visitor center on the other side of the island. I take advantage of the opportunity to buy yet another golden feather from the ram while I'm here, increasing my total to 8. But I am told that was the last one he had available to sell. However, asking about other merch, I am reminded of the hat he is selling for 100 coins. Immediately, I purchase this new hat, a provincial park hat, and equip it. Now, we're matching. Then I head back through the cave to continue my way around the island for now. On this side of the island, I find some giant power lines and a rubber flower. Watering this flower and propelling upwards, I find myself near Meteor Lake, where the runners are warming up for a race. Not forgetting my earlier promise, I find the nephew of the one canine I spoke to earlier and remind him to take breaks and to stay hydrated. Good advice, he tells me. Gliding back down, I notice a big boat. Here I find a seagull who gives me a hearty greeting. This individual is taking a break, I learn, but soon they tell me they will be on the hunt for some rare fish as soon as work is over, as that is their hobby. If I happen to catch any, they tell me, feel free to bring it by in exchange for some money. I tell them I wish I could, but I don't even have a fishing rod with which to catch fish. However, this shouldn't be an issue as they inform me that their friend Bill might be able to lend me one. I'll need to find him first, I suppose. Also, in the front of the ship, I find my third and final treasure map. This one states that a treasure is buried at the end of the beacon's shade, and since I learned earlier that there is a lighthouse somewhere on this island, I suppose that is where I should be looking, at the end of its shadow. On yet another island, I find a small toucan next to another updraft. He, it turns out, has been practicing diving, something I don't know how to do. He quickly fills me in. All I must do is glide with Z and then let go of all arrow keys. This will initiate a dive which builds up a ton of speed. I take a moment to put this into practice, and indeed, diving does allow me to gain a ton of speed very quickly. While here, I also managed to snag my 15th shell, the exact amount I needed for Jen, the small bird who demanded I collect them for her. While exploring around, I managed to notice a shadow which seems to be originating not from the mainland, but from something in the opposite direction. I decide to head over to investigate, remembering that funny lizard which told me of the existence of a mysterious island. Atop this mountain, I find a silver feather. Don't actually know what this does yet, honestly, but at least I now know where the lighthouse is. Oh look, Aunt May and our little cottage are just below it. Heading back there, I make my way up the cliff onto the lighthouse. Remembering my treasure map, I try to dig at the shadow's end, but I don't have any luck. Maybe I have it wrong. Oh well. I also find my friend the painter here, like he said I would the last time I saw him. Admiring his art, I offer some encouragement. He is happy with it, but he isn't sure it will fit in with the rest of the paintings in his exhibit. However, he has another idea, to follow a river up to its source and try again. I'll need to keep a sharp eye out for him as I continue my hiking. After grabbing some water, I head back to the lighthouse to grow a rubber flower I spotted earlier. Jumping on this, I reach the top of the lighthouse where I open a chest and receive my 9th golden feather, making good progress. Just below the lighthouse, I find a sign indicating that ahead of me is Meteor Lake, and around this lake winds a path called Meteor Lake Overlook where I spotted the runners warming up earlier. Heading forwards, I meet someone new, a fisher walrus. This must be the Bill the seagull told me about. Sure enough, after I inquire about fishing, Bill offers to teach me, and, to this purpose, he lends me a fishing rod. I sit down to learn this skill, casting my line off. After a while, I grow a bit impatient, but soon enough I get a nibble, and, soon after that, a full bite. At this, I am told to pull back and tap X, which I do, pulling out my first fish, an albino common carp. I make sure to say thanks to my teacher before moving on and beginning my fishing career. Here, I also find a green frog relaxing and dreaming of breakfast, tomorrow's breakfast, and all kinds of breakfast foods. They don't ever do anything at all except for this, but I don't think I've ever related more to anyone, so they had to be included. Running around Meteor Lake a bit, I notice another rubber flower in need of some water. So I fill up my bucket from the lake and head back to water it. Jumping up, I find a nice surprise, another golden feather, and, once it's collected, I'm given an achievement, Feather Finder, for collecting 10 golden feathers in total. Next, since I'm nearby them, I decide to head back to that shady bird I met before and that cliff face which said I needed at least 7 golden feathers to climb. Now I have that and more. In fact, I speak to the bird again, and, with the money I have saved up, I purchase 2 more golden feathers, bringing my total up to 12. These, it turns out, were the last ones he had, and I decide to ask him what his deal is. He's a little standoffish at this, to say the least, but after a bit more prying, I get him to open up. Turns out he is short on cash for tuition next semester. I ask him how much he needs, and he tells me about 400 coins. That's why he was flipping feathers for a profit from the visitor center. I suppose, despite his attitude, I should try to help him. With my many golden feathers, I make quick work of the cliff face, and at the top something strange happens. My spent feathers freeze over and do not replenish when resting. Also here I talk to the climbers again, who are happy with my quick progress, although it seems they are still working to make it up themselves, encouraging each other. Continuing along the trail, I find a hot spring. Taking a quick bird bath, my frozen feathers unfreeze. Turns out up here it is so cold that when I use a feather it freezes over and can only be reinvigorated with one of these hot springs, or by standing near fires. I'll have to be careful when I decide to use a feather this far up the mountain. Farther up I find a polar bear who warns me to be safe and to use the hot springs when I need to. I decide to press onwards, around and up the mountain. Near the top I find my photographer friend. Unfortunately, he informs me, the bridge seems to have collapsed. Although he is bummed out that he won't be able to make it to the top, he does tell me of another way up. Along the dark side of the mountain there is a way which was closed off a long time ago. Perhaps, he suggests, that path may still be usable. I head back to a hot spring to unfreeze my feathers and make one final ascent. Finally, at the top of Hawk Peak, I take a moment to catch my breath, and a white bass, before ascending the final precipice. I approach the highest point and take in the beautiful view, celebrating my achievement. Suddenly, my cell phone rings. I suppose I have signal all the way up here. I quickly open my phone and take the call, saying hi to my mom. I tell her I was worried about her, despite her reassurances, because of her surgery. This, it turns out, was what was bothering me earlier this morning. Anxiety. I tell Mom that I am at the top of Hawk Peak, and she is very proud of me for continuing the family tradition. I tell Mom that I'm glad she's okay and that I love her. Then, all of a sudden, the famous Hawk Peak updraft begins behind me, something my mom is, naturally, already familiar with. She tells me I should catch a ride on it before it fizzles out. I tell her I'm nervous, but Mom assures me I can do it. We tell each other we love each other one more time and hang up, and I'm given an achievement, Hawk Peak. I decide to listen to my mom. Although I've made it to the top of Hawk Peak, there is still lots of daylight left and lots of things still to do. I decide, before calling it a day, to try and get as much done as possible on this beautiful island. I begin with a little bit of fishing and a little bit of gliding. However, I soon meet a very loud bird named Avery. This bird, it turns out, is in the mood for a race, and I remember seeing her sign earlier. Asking if I've come to race, I respond, of course. She challenges me to race all the way to the summit. However, I'm not allowed to use more than 9 golden feathers, since that's how many she has. Before we start, she gives me a walkie-talkie to communicate during the race if I need to restart. Then she asks if I'm ready, which I confirm. Then we line up, and we take off. In reward for winning this race, Avery grants me a medal. Thank you for the race. Soaring down, I find a small island, which upon approach I notice has lots of trash on it. That is no good, so I start picking it up, and, talking to the deer here, I learn she's been doing the same. After picking up all 9, I inform her that all of the trash has been found, and she thanks me for my help. Before I leave, I tell her that I like her sun hat, which she informs me she made herself. In fact, she's making a bunch of them for an upcoming craft fair, and, if I'm interested, she'd be willing to sell me one. I ask how much they are, and she tells me 100 coins, although she isn't certain of that price. I tell her that they're probably worth more than that due to the effort it takes to make each hat, and she asks me if 125 coins is a fair price. I assure her that it is. Then, after I pay for one, she puts a nice blue ribbon on it and hands it over to me, my very own sun hat. Next, I make my way back to the Sailing Seagull and let him know that, now, I do have some fish to sell. These I quickly sell to him one after another, and, after I sell a couple, he offers to give me a fish journal to keep track of which fish I've found. I accept his offer. Afterwards, I try and sell a fish I had already sold to him previously, and he tells me that he can't offer me any more coins for this one, but he can offer me bait. Bait, he lets me know, will allow me to catch fish much faster. I quickly sell the rest of my fish and check out the fish journal to review my progress. After this, I notice a small cave which needs opening up. Once I do so, this cave takes me up near the top of Hawk Peak to another opening I had found earlier. A new shortcut is unlocked. Back at my cottage, I talk to Aunt May and tell her that I finally made it to the top of Hawk Peak, although I wouldn't have called it a short hike. I tell her a little bit about all of the things I have been up to, and I tell her that Mom says hi, and that she's okay. Aunt May tells me she knew she would be. I debate going back into the cottage to take a nap, but I decide against it for now. Instead, I decide to catch a few more fish and check up on my turtle friend who, it seems, has been hard at work. Then, remembering something, I head back around to the north side of the island, back to the Orange Islands to rent a motorboat. Approaching the deer, I pay 100 coins to rent the boat, and he hands me the key. Talking to the son lying here on the ground, bemoaning his unfortunate situation, I offer to take him out on the boat now that I have it rented for the day. He is electrified by this offer and quickly hops in the boat, ready to set out. I won't lie, the boat controls take a bit of getting used to, but as I practice more, I start to get the hang of it. Eventually, after having a bit of fun, I disembark near Jen, the small bird who demanded shells from me, and I inform her that I found 15 of them. She takes them, and then, that's it. Not even a thank you. Some people are just so ungrateful. Well, I can't get a thank you from her, but I can get a new task, which I suppose I'll accept. She gives me a new item, a shell necklace, to deliver to Ranger May, or Aunt May as I call her. Returning to the boat, I speak to my passenger who tells me he's been working on a bit of a boating challenge. 1 second, my little friend. I take the boat over to the cabin and I talk to Aunt May, delivering the necklace to her. Aunt May is pleased with the gift, complimenting Jen for her hard work in collecting all of those shells, which I guess I'll just let that one go. Also, Aunt May tells me that she found something in the cabin I should have, and she hands me a golden feather, my 13th so far. I thank her for the gift. Now ready, I return to the boat and inform my fellow seafarer that I am ready for the boating challenge. I am teleported back to the Orange Islands where I am told the rules. There are now a bunch of checkpoints spread out in the water and I must go through each one and finish the course in 2 minutes or less. Then, I'm off. Not the most flawless of races. Like I said, the controls for this take a little bit of getting used to. Unfortunately, jumping that sick ramp seems to have busted up the boat. Eventually, we get it started again, but it seems to be making some weird noises now. We debate taking the boat back to the boy's father, but he actually told him not to use the ramp, so that conversation isn't going to go so well. Maybe, I state hopefully, there is someone else around here who knows boat stuff. Wait a minute, of course there is. I head around to the only other boat on the water and I strike up a conversation with my seagull friend, asking him, casually of course, what he knows about boat repair. Thankfully, he seems to know a whole lot about boat repair. He offers to take a look at our boat to see what might be wrong. In no time at all, he identifies and fixes the problem, a bent propeller. We thank him profusely for his assistance, although he does warn us to avoid any more ramps in the future. We agree, and I decide to attempt the boating challenge once more, this time with absolutely no ramps. This time there is an extra rule. If I hit a rock or anything else with the boat, I will have a 10-second penalty added to my time. Fair enough. My first attempt with this new rule yields a final time of 77 seconds, even with my 3 penalties. This, I am told, means that I won. And as a reward I am given a golden feather, 14 in total. Of course, unsatisfied with my time, I decide to give the boating challenge another attempt. And then again. And then again. On my last attempt, despite an early hiccup, I pull it together in the end and manage a time of 38 seconds, earning an achievement for this feat, not a scratch. Back on the mainland, I start exploring around, looking for coins, treasures, or anything new. Soon enough, I run into Avery again, who is interested in another race, this time on a new route. I tell her I am interested and she says first to the lighthouse door wins, and I can only use up to 3 golden feathers this time. Did you throw some of them away since our last race? Oh well. I decide to take her up on this challenge. The race concluded, Avery compliments me on my achievement. Deciding to head around to the stormy side of the island, I actually run into Avery yet again, and, like the last times, she challenges me to one final race. This time, the finish line is the abandoned building to the west. More specifically, the post on the top of that building. For this race, only 5 feathers are allowed. Fair enough. I line up, and we take off. This time, upon winning the race, I am granted an achievement, Parkour Master, for winning all of the races at least once. Avery accepts her defeat gracefully. Next, wandering around the island, I stumble into a little alcove where I find a strange individual. This odd feline is very defensive and immediately claims his permits are in order, which, after some light pressing, he admits is actually not true. Turns out he had a permit, but a fish ate it. He bribes me with 5 fishing bait in order to not rat him out. I inform him that I actually had no intention of ratting him out. In fact, I instead set out towards Meteor Lake to try and retrieve his fishing permit. On my first cast, I managed to reel in a fish, and, surprisingly enough, in its mouth I find the missing camping permit. Heading back to the cat, I hand this lost item back to him, finally assuaging his fears of being caught without a permit. As a thanks, he gives me some more bait. Back at the polar bear's cabin, I run into my climbing friends again, who tell me that, as I can see, they finally made it up to Hawk Peak. This whole area is actually considered Hawk Peak. As for the very top, they aren't going to attempt that without some more practice, but one day, they'll make it. I believe in them. I decide to pass a little bit of time fishing up some of the local species, filling out my fishing journal. With my fishing journal completely filled out, I quickly return to the Seagull and sell all of my fish, new ones for money and duplicates for bait. Once done, the sailor congratulates me on having fished up all of the entries in the journal. As a reward, he has a special prize for me, a golden rod. This, I am told, will attract rare fish, the kinds not included in the fishing journal until they've been caught. Finishing up the conversation, I am given an achievement. The fish are biting today. Heading up the mountain, I stop to talk to the cool bird which sold me all of those feathers before. Now, with extra cash on hand and nothing to buy, I offer him 400 coins to cover his tuition. After all, I just found it lying around, so it seems like the right thing to do. He is shocked, but he does thank me, and even offers me a wristwatch in repayment. Weird. I suddenly have an irresistible urge to sell this on the internet. Instead, I decide to head back to the ram to return it, but not before running into the painter again. This time, he is unhappy with his handiwork, but I tell him that I think it's great. He tells me that he's going to head towards the graveyard next to see if inspiration will strike him there. So I make my way to the graveyard where, true to his word, I find him, painting in the rain. I did not know you could do that. Turns out his exhibition is next week and nothing he's been trying has been working. And, to be honest, he's worried about it. But I tell him what he has been painting is really good. But I am informed Ian Artsworth is the curator. The Ian Artsworth. So these dumb landscapes aren't going to cut it. And then, when he sees them, Ian is going to cut the paintings in half with a karate chop. Probably. Maybe. So, obviously you are spiraling, my friend. Let's take a step back. Or not. Let's tie our worth up in the paintings and move to Outlook Point. That works too. So, wanting to help, I make my way to Outlook Point. Here, I find the painter painting something spectacular. However, he tells me that it is unusable since Outlook Point has been painted to death. Nonsense, I tell him. His unique style really sets this painting apart. But he assures me it isn't new enough. It's already been done. He wants people to feel something when they look at it. But wait, I tell him, I feel something when I look at it. I feel happy. If I owned that painting, I'd look at it every day, in fact. And it would make every day better. Really? He asks me. Yes, I reply. You were invited to this showcase because they like your work, I encourage him. So I'm sure they would want to see this too. He tells me he needs some time to think this over, and he's going to find something new to paint. Maybe back where he started. So I head back to the first place I saw the painter. I find him at the visitor center painting a new painting, this time with Ranger John in it. I tell him it's coming along nicely, and he tells me that finally he has decided to paint the things he wants to paint, not what he thinks others might want him to paint. And this has made him feel a lot better. He tells me his new goal is to capture all aspects of the park. And, as a side note, he tells me he found something on the way down the mountain. A golden feather, my 17th one. Happy to help, my little painting friend. Next, wanting to try something, I equip my bucket, grab some water, head over to the campfire at the visitor center, and douse it, putting it out, an action which greatly perplexes Ranger John. Greatly fearing a forest fire, I decide to make it my mission to put out all fires I see, immediately heading back to Aunt May and dousing her fire as well. She tells me it was a little warm for a fire anyways. Back on the Orange Islands, yet another fire meets its fate at the hands of a cool bucket of ocean water. Another sandy beach saved from destruction. And finally, atop Hawk Peak, I discover one more. I quickly fill up my water and douse it, earning an achievement. Only you can prevent campfires from my tireless efforts. While up here, I remember my photographer fox friend and head back to see what he's up to. He asks me if I managed to make it up to the top, and I let him know that I did, actually. He excitedly asks me if I could show him the way, but unfortunately, I tell him you kinda need to be able to fly. Maybe he could climb, I suggest. But it looks like he doesn't have enough golden feathers. However, I have plenty of those, and so I offer to lend him some of mine. He tells me he would probably need 6 to make it up, and so I hand them over. And then we are off to the summit together. At the top, we pause a moment to take in the view. He thanks me for helping him reach the top, and, not forgetting our earlier agreement, he offers to take a picture of me. Let's do it, I tell him, and he tells me to strike a pose. Which, stunning. And as the camera flashes, I am given an achievement, Photo Friends. He returns my golden feathers to me and promises to email me the photo later. Next, finally remembering that I still have that ram's watch, I successfully resist selling it on the internet and return to him. I hand it over and he thanks me profusely for finding it. In return, this time I am not given a golden feather, but a silver feather. These, I am told, are very rare and he lets me know what they do. With each one I find, I am able to climb faster and fly higher. Essentially, with each silver feather I collect, each golden feather goes farther. This, along with the silver feather I found on that island earlier, makes 2, and funnily enough, that is all there is to find. Next, I head back to the lighthouse to try and search for that treasure I couldn't find earlier. It turns out I was digging just below the highest point of the shadow. I was so close and yet so far. In this chest, I managed to find another golden feather, my 18th one. Now, all of the treasure maps have been solved. Soon afterwards, while flying around the northern side of the island, I managed to spot a treasure chest I missed earlier along a cliff face. In this, I find yet another golden feather, 19 in total. Next, I decide to revisit my turtle friend, who traded me my shovel a good while ago. He, I learn, has been hard at work turning Sand Castle into Sand City. Although, he learns as I am talking to him, he has regrettably lost the recent election for mayor, coming in 3rd place. Lots of competition, I guess. However, he managed to snag a seat on the city council. Great things are happening in Sand City. Sailing around a bit later on, I notice even more improvements have been made to Sand City with the addition of a golden feather. Grabbing this feather, my 20th, I am gifted an achievement, Feathers Forever. That, it turns out, was the last one. Oh, sorry, this is actually Sand Province now, not Sand City. And it looks like the politics are really heating up for my friend. Best of luck to you in your vigorous campaign, my dear turtle child. Only a few more tasks to go. First, I fly around all of the map on the lookout for any rubber flowers I might have left unwatered. Since I've been doing these as I go, most of them are already complete, but I do manage to find a couple I missed. Then, spotting one near the abandoned building, I grab some more water, cross this bridge easily, super easily, and give it a soak. This earns me an achievement, Green Thumb, for watering every last sprout. Second, remembering that strange sign near the visitor center which promised strawberries and toast if I returned at 5, I wait patiently until 5 p.m. and head back to Ranger John. Unfortunately, he tells me they are all out of strawberries. He apologizes, but he says they do have lots of toast if I would like some. I sure would, Ranger John. I sure would. I am given toast, which I eat. Electrifying stuff. This earns me an achievement, Crispy. Third, although not necessarily an achievement, I decide that I should put my golden rod to good use and try to catch all of the rare fish in the game. Turns out, at this point, I am only missing 9 more fish, so, with my golden rod in hand, I set out to catch them. Finally, with all of these various tasks done, I find myself growing tired. And, I think to myself, I suppose it is a good time for a nap. I make my way back to Aunt May and tell her that I'm really glad I came. It's been nice. And she tells me that she's glad too. Anytime I want, I'm welcome to visit again. And at that, I decide to head back to the cabin, thinking to myself that it would be nice to take a break. I decide to take a little nap. And now, my fellow hikers, our time exploring this beautiful island is at an end. All that there is to do is done. Every achievement has been collected. Every feather found. The whole island explored. Ocean navigated. Funny animals met. And some memorable friends made along the way. And, most importantly, some anxiety eased, now that Mom is okay. I thank you sincerely for joining me on this adventure. If you would like to follow me on my next one, I would welcome the company. But until such a time as we may meet again, I bid you now a fond farewell. Okay.
Mom, you're being scammed!
But I got it, and I had money. I didn't need it. I'll take another one.
This is why I'm stable in this marriage.